Well, I was just reading actually over in a book from Jan van Helsing on my Kindle. Um, um, Hände weg von diesem Buch. Well, keep your hands away from this book. Here's a picture of the book. Well, it is quite interesting because Jan van Helsing, or Jan Udo Howley, goes into the time traveling theory that time travel is even possible. And like in the science fiction series Star Trek Enterprise or something, timeline control battles. I had personally visions of timeline control battles taking place. I had visions of people being abducted or removed, Kali-like entities or controlling entities, witches or whatever, and they were held in some type of higher dimensional cage or prison at the end of times. Well, not the biblical end times, but independent of the timeline. And I had visions of even people being, somebody being chased around by troopers, like in the Star Wars, like they looked like Star Wars soldiers, you know, the stormtroopers. And they were chasing this person around because he had too much knowledge on, or was fighting also for control of the timeline. And I will quote on a comment that I answered to a friend of mine on Facebook. And he was talking about, well, it's actually about being timeless. This figure transfigured Earth and so on and into the inner Earth. But it was now in the second Earth. I returned to Hyperborea beyond time. While he was responding to Miguel Serrano's book on the Hollow Earth, no? Synchronicity by Miguel Serrano. And it triggered with me, since I was just reading this book, on my Kindle, Hände weg von diesem Buch, keep your hands away from this book from Jan Udo Howley. And I answered, well, indeed beyond time. I was just reading a book from Jan Udo Howley where he writes about Saint Germain, apparently the first time traveler on Earth. Lol, I don't know, but I have researched about the Philadelphia experiment and Al Bielek. He says that he was subjected to time experiments, as well as that the USS Philadelphia went through a time wormhole, and that it disappeared and reappeared. They actually made a movie about this subject, and it's called The Philadelphia. It goes about a ship after the Second World War of the United States Navy, that they are actually using very strong magnetic fields, or they magnetize the entire ship in a certain way, or very high, that it went through a time or wormhole, and it dematerializes on one spot and rematerializes on another spot. And also in another book of Jan Udo Howley, he mentions that even the Germans were experimenting with wormholes or chronosphere type weaponry, where they could teleport an entire tank onto the battlefield. And apparently they did this by the end of the war. Now I do not know, it's so extreme into the science fiction that it's really mind-boggling. It is pretty mind-boggling stuff. I personally saw some humans in some type of spacesuit, apparently traveling also through a time in a vision. The Imperial Germans will be studying this time frame. They cannot alter the timeline though, but they can study the timeline. Timeline density is like a rubber actually. Well, you have to figure it that our timeline is like thick rubber, and you can make small alterations in the timeline, with energy, or that's how I believe the plan of God is actually being implemented, by small alterations in the timeline, by changes in the timeline, in technology, in what we find out, the Imperial Germans, the space Nazis, or the Imperial German UFOs. So time is like a rubber. Timeline density is quite like a rubber actually. You cannot change the path of time, but influence it you can. So there are time editors who are trying to lead this world into salvation. When it comes to time travel, it is very difficult to understand it. I personally saw how souls who were in energy form go back in time to relive past lives, as a way to forgive themselves in the process, or punishment as you deem to see it. They went back in time, these souls, and lived the lives of their victims. What you do unto others, you do unto yourself. Literally. I believe this is some type of hell or purgatory, where you can relive certain lives to be able to forgive yourself for what you have done. Also, although I also believe that there are so negative entities that want to destroy all of creation, they're really negative entities that are consuming. They either will be destroyed, the so-called second death, biblical second death, well, the soul death, or go to some real hell. Yeah, well, this just came up by me writing about this timeless being, actually being timeless. So yes, timeline mechanics or timeline editing. The Saint Germain, well, in this book, you know, from Jan Howley, is actually seen by many people of many different ages, and he always looks the same age. And there are so many well, myths around it, Saint Germain, that you can, if you read about it, you don't believe it actually. But might he be a time traveler? A real time traveler? Because he spoke 400 years ago about visionary views or visionary TV or moving pictures or something. This could be like TV of today or the handheld devices. And even the king said back then to him, well, thank you for showing me this on your visual, on your moving pictures. So it might be a handheld device that shows pictures moving. So there's so many myths going on about Saint Germain. And well, if you research online the conspiracy and have an open mind, and then you think, is this possible? That the US government did have time experiments and even a time controlling base, like in those series, Stargate or something, but just in time. Temporal troopers, temporal police force. Was there a time battle going on? I don't know. Because I believe if you edit the timeline, then you change the present. That's how you assume it. But here it is, all the changes that have already taken place in the past are already here. These are the corrections. And you cannot change the path in such a way that it changes your present and you becoming a millionaire. No, that's not possible. But it is possible to influence the timeline in such a way that we leave to a certain way. Like so many times evil or satanic forces on this planet wanted to destroy this world. A nuclear holocaust, like in the film Terminator 2. But they failed because UFOs appeared out of somewhere and stopped them and paralyzed all the nuclear launch ICBMs launching facilities. So yeah, one day, I don't know if my visions are correct or true. If it's possible to travel in time, I also had apparent visions of the future where we also use some type of gateways, but that will be like in 100 years from now. Our technology will be so far that it will practically mirror many science fiction series you are looking at today. Or maybe the elite knows that these technologies exist somehow and implement them in the series to show us what they found out, according to their laws that they have to tell us what they're actually doing. World War Z, World War III, Zombie War. I watched the movie World War Z, and the only state that is saved by this zombie apocalypse or zombie end times war is Israel, practically. Okay, it gets then overrun, but still, they knew it before. Is this a message that they know it before that World War Z or World War III is going to begin? Russia respects Israel and doesn't do anything against Israel, although there are Zionist Mossad agents provoking the war in the Ukraine. So they're in the pocket. And the United States, the biggest ally of Israel. So this provoked war is planned. Russia is, well, not doing anything to instigate it, but if Russia would invade Europe, then that would also be a show that they are also under control. And yeah, that is what I wanted to say, and hope you enjoyed it. Axe on the timeline. Cheers.